What's up, everybody? Mark with Coffee&Toys here, and I have been listening to your feedback. I've been asking the questions. You guys have been giving me the answers, so today we're doing something new. It seems like a lot of you are really craving G.I. Joe content. It doesn't necessarily have to be about toys even. It can be other things, and one of those things that we've been discussing together is the new comic series, or not so new series, but new publisher and maybe a new direction for the G.I. Joe Real American Hero comic brand. So today we are going to actually I'm going to review G.I. Joe A Real American Hero 301, which I have my copy right here. This is the variant version of the cover. So we are going to go through this together. Spoilers will be discussed, so if you're not wanting to know what happens, probably shouldn't be watching this video, but if you are interested, stay tuned. We're going to cover issue 301 and what happens in it. And yeah, we will also be covering, at the end of the video, I will go through the reprint of G.I. Joe #1 from Skybound Comics. This is also the variant cover of that issue. As you can clearly see, it's done in the likeness of the original issue. But we'll talk about what makes this issue really special near the end of this video. But for now, we are going to jump in to G.I. Joe 301, and actually, you know what? Before we jump into it, let's start with here's what's happened up to this point. Now, you may or may not know, IDW had the license for G.I. Joe Real American Hero. They started with issue 155 and a half many moons ago. I can't even remember, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. Somebody can fact check me and find out what it is. But they carried the Real American Hero series from issue 155 and a half through issue 300, which is a hell of a run. So kudos to IDW for keeping the G.I. Joe comic alive with Larry Hama at the helm through issue 300. And so what we're going to do real quick, we'll talk about what happened at issue 300, because issue 301 is an actual continuation from IDW, Skybound Comics, which is a subsidiary or something of Image Comics, and we'll get into that more here in a minute. But issue 300, which I actually do have my copy of issue 300 right here, in case you're curious. This was the final double-sized issue from IDW. And basically what happened at the end of that issue is Serpentor pretty much know he's defeated by G.I. Joe. The Joes are getting away, and he decides that he is going to activate this bioweapon that he has, and he's just going to kill everyone. He's done. And that's basically the cliffhanger that 300 ends with. It also ends with Duke Wild Bill at the helm of a C-130, I believe it is, and there's some G.I. Joes in the back of it. You know, I'm thinking, I can't even remember all the ones that are in it, but we will go over it because they're also in 301. Their plane's getting ready to crash. Serpentor's about ready to blow up this bioweapon of sorts, and that's where 300 ended. So, with that being said, we're going to go over, we're actually going to bring up issue 301. I'll put some panels up that I'm going to discuss during the comic, but we're just going to go through it and talk about what makes this issue 301 really amazing. Okay, so we are now at issue 301 of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. This issue is written by Larry Hama and is penciled, drawn by Chris Mooneyham, I believe is how I say his name. Now, I apologize to Chris if I'm saying your name incorrectly. It might be Mooneyham, but I think it's Mooneyham. Or Mooneyham. Maybe it runs together. I apologize. Chris, if you watch this video, feel free to drop a comment and tell me how to say your name correctly. That being said, I do have the issue right in front of me, so if you do occasionally see me look down, it's just so I don't have to re-edit this video every time I need to actually look at something on a panel and tell you guys. But I will be sharing some panels with you talking about issue 301. Now, there will be spoilers, so if you don't want to know spoilers, you probably shouldn't watch the video right now and maybe skip ahead to the end if you want to know what happens with the reprint of issue 1 of G.I. Joe. So, this is by Skybound Entertainment. Skybound Entertainment is operated by Robert Kirkman, who is, of course, if you don't know, the creator of the Walking Dead series, and that does play into this a little bit, so stay tuned. Skybound Entertainment evidently has a deal with Image Comics to be able to produce their comics. So evidently G.I. Joe and Real American Hero is licensed to Skybound Comics, and Skybound Entertainment rather, has a working deal with Image Comics to produce comic books. So, with that being said, we step into issue 301 with the first and second pages, essentially telling us who G.I. Joe, the team, is, what they're about, a fighting force, blah, 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 the same old thing. And Cobra is on the next panel, or the next page rather, and explains that they are an evil international terrorist organization, yada, yada, yada. So if you've never heard of G.I. Joe before and you just found this comic on the shelves, you get a very, very small, quick primer on what G.I. Joe is all about. But then we cut to the action left over from issue 300. And that is, we are with Duke and Wild Bill in the C-130 as it is crashing down towards Cobra Island. And meanwhile, there are more Joes on the water in a whale trying to get to the island to just do this huge attack. In the meantime, as I stated earlier, Serpentor has decided to unleash a bioweapon to kill everyone and everything in its path. Cobra Commander has been captured by the G.I. Joe team. He is currently locked away in the bottom of the whale with former CG Laura and Wade Collins, who is also a former Crimson Guard as well. From back in the day, he was in Vietnam with Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, and Stalker, and was part of that team. Thought for dead, later came back. But anyway, so that pretty much sums up where we're at right now. There is a ticking countdown. Serpentor, or Serpentor Khan as he's known now, has enabled this nuclear device, and it's counting down from 1 minute. So the C-130 is coming down. Duke and Wild Bill are trying to get it to pull up. The Cutter and the rest of the Joes in the whale are hearing that there's a lot of commotion going on Cobra Island, and they quickly realize that Serpentor has enabled this bioweapon. So everybody's trying to turn around and get the hell out of Dodge before this bioweapon goes off. And of course, Serpentor's manic. He's wanting to do this. He doesn't care what happens. Mindbender is there with him saying, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" Serpentor doesn't care. He wants to kill everyone, and if that means killing himself, so be it. Again, apologize. I do have to look down every once in a while to kind of get my bearings exactly on what's going down. So they realize this, and they are going to get away from the island as quickly as possible. Cobra Commander has indeed been captured. He is in the bottom of the whale. And, he's given some snarky little remarks to Wade and to Laura. And he realizes what's going on, and he decides he is going to make his escape. He's only got one shot. There is the jet sled that is in the bottom of the whale. And lo and behold, he makes his move, and he kills Wade Collins. Shoots him. Boom. Kills him. Gets on the jet sled, and he is out of there. So, we've already had our first fatality, and we're only a third of the way into the issue. Cobra Commander is making his way away from the whale, nothing they can do, and then the unthinkable happens. The actual explosion happens of the bioweapon. Serpentor has done it. He is trying to kill everyone. The whale, fortunately, has started breaking away previous to the detonation. The C-130 with Duke and Wild Bill has also managed to pull up and start getting away from the explosion. And the Joe team is just in shock of what has just happened. We then cut to a panel of Cobra Commander on the jet sled. And you can see the effect of the blast coming up right behind him. And Cobra Commander makes the comment, "I'm going to beat the explosion." I mean, the panel's actually really cool because it's just right on the heels of the jet sled, and Cobra Commander is just exuberantly happy because he is out. I don't want to say he's outsmarted the Joes again, but somehow through nook or crook, Cobra Commander has escaped once again, and he knows how lucky he is. And that, to me, is probably my favorite part of this issue, is just like even Cobra Commander can't believe he's did it. It's how it comes off to me, and it's a really fun panel to see him. In the meantime, the C-130's pulled back. They're getting like I said, the hell away from Cobra Island as fast as they can, and they get away, and then we cut back to Cobra Island post-explosion. You kind of see some debris falling down in the sky, and it cuts to an internal panel, and you just see all these people just kind of walking around in a haze, and their flesh is bubbly, but no one's dead. We then cut to a picture of Serpentor, and I'm going to read what it has, and I'll put it on the screen as well. But it does say, Dr. Mindbender stands up and says, "What have you done to us?" And Serpentor says, "I have this intense urge to rip living flesh off the bone and devour it. But I am still me. I am not some mindless criminal monster." And with that, folks, we now have zombies in the G.I. Joe universe. Moves on to the next panel, next page. We see the whale has docked. We are back at what I assume is the pit. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's not the pit, but they're unloading the whale. They're unloading the C-130, and the final panel of the comic ends with the G.I. Joe team at attention and Wade Collins' body being carried out of the C-130. Or I guess out of the whale is actually where it would have been. And he is carried by Stalker, Snake Eyes, Sean Collins, Wade's son, the new Snake Eyes, and Storm Shadow. And that is how issue 301 ends. From there, we get a brief from the desk of Larry Hama, and basically Larry thanking the fans, thanking Skybound and Image, saying, "Hey, thanks for, I can't believe it's been 40 years and I'm still doing this and I'm still enjoying it. Thank you very much." And then we get a very interesting dossier of the G.I. Joe team and some of the Cobra team. And it's just a headshot of each person and kind of a quick little bio. So like a mini file card. And hopefully I've put that up on the screen as well so you can see it. And then we get, in the last issue, we get a from the desk of Chris Mooneyham. And he basically says, and it's a really interesting letter. He's like, "Hey, I wasn't a fan of G.I. Joe growing up. G.I. Joe, I'm a little bit too young to have enjoyed G.I. Joe, but all my friends did." And so he has some recollection of G.I. Joe through that manner. He tells us that he's a military brat, and that, you know, the sense of honor with being a family member of both parents who were in the military, that it kind of now resonates better with him now that he's actually doing the artwork for G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. So I thought that was a really cool letter to include in that. And yeah, that pretty much sums up issue 301. The preview for 302 is up on the internet. It basically is going to show the funeral or whatnot for Wade Collins. And yeah, that is where the issue ends. So with that being said, I think it's fantastic because, you know, the zombie card's been played a lot. But if you're going to have Robert Kirkman, of course you're going to have zombies. So I think it's actually cool that they use this bioweapon to create zombies. And yet we know Serpentor is still Serpentor. He just has this urge to eat flesh now. And I think this is just a fun little, I think for me, and I apologize, and I want to hear your comments. So make sure you're dropping comments. And if you're enjoying this, make sure you like the video. But I think this is going to lead G.I. Joe into a new direction. I feel like when IDW had the license, and, you know, Larry was still writing for him, but I feel like he might have went to the well one too many times. And the story was kind of boring. It just kind of seemed like the same thing over and over. It was another brainwave scanner. And this now with the zombies is at least something new. And zombies aren't something new to the G.I. Joe universe. So it actually marries itself very well to have Robert Kirkman bringing zombies into the G.I. Joe universe. Or maybe it was Larry's idea. Maybe it was a combination of the two of them. But I do actually like it. I think it can be fun. And who the hell doesn't want to see Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, and the rest of the Joe team just tearing through mindless zombies? You know, I did the recent review of the Mole Rat from the G.I. Joe Classified line. That's zombie-esque. So again, zombies have always been something of the G.I. Joe universe. So I am glad to finally see them in the comics. We're finally going to have some new material to sink our teeth into, so to speak. And I find that really exciting. So that is my review of G.I. Joe 301. I hope you enjoyed it. But we're not done yet. We are going to move on to the reprint from Skybound Entertainment of G.I. Joe issue 1. So let's get into that right now. Okay, so like I mentioned, with this issue 301 from Skybound Entertainment, Image Comics. They also reprinted G.I. Joe issue number 1. Now, they did do a variant cover, and I'll show you that variant cover again. In this case, they have done it with the Cobra Hiss Tank and Cobra jumping forward, very much in homage to issue 1 of the G.I. Joe comic series. And just to show you the back, they even do this cool thing with the Mobat. And I think this might, I can't remember if this was on the original comic in the 80s or not, but I do love it, and I know I've seen this before. So, couple things about this comic if you are interested in picking it up. It is a reprint of issue 1 of the G.I. Joe comic series, first and foremost. So when you open this up, right here, you're going to have just, this is the exact same G.I. Joe issue 1 with one major exception. And with this exception, I'm just going to, if you haven't read G.I. Joe number 1 and you're a G.I. Joe fan, do yourself a favor. Either go buy this issue or go buy a reprint somewhere, or if you really want to, go buy the original issue and do yourself a favor and read it, because everybody should know where your favorite brand comes from, and of course G.I. Joe number 1 would do just that. But the big change in this, and I guess before we jump into the big change, one of the fun things with this is the actual paper that they used to print this issue is old school comic book style paper. It's not that new stuff that's all glossy and really nice, which is kind of how the issue 301 was. This is old school print. I mean, I actually gave both copies, 301 and issue 1, to my wife, and I said, feel the difference in this issue reprint of issue number 1. And it does. It feels like that, almost like newspaper. It's really, really cool. Kind of, and it even has that comic book smell. If you're old like me, you know what I'm talking about. But I've actually opened it up to the main difference in this this issue. And Larry Hama has a write-up in the beginning that says, hey, when I wrote G.I. Joe issue 1 back in 1982, I had a specific statement from General Hawk, or Hawk at that point, he wasn't a general yet, where he's given a speech to the G.I. Joe team, and he basically, what he said, what Larry wrote and what the Marvel editors decided to print was two different things completely. Larry said something that was a little, we're going to call it not PC, and the editor, Jim Shooter, decided to change it. So with this issue, Larry Hama was able to have his original writing added back in. And I'm just going to share it with you right now, because I think it's really cool. So General Hawk's making this speech to the G.I. Joe team, and he says, he's talking to the team, and the team says, "What is our job?" And General Hawk replies, "We're soldiers. Our job is to do the unthinkable and be forgotten." And there's a lot of gravitas with that statement. So much so that Jim Shooter at Marvel, the editor for during that time of the G.I. Joe comic, decided that he was not going to include that statement and be forgotten. I don't want to get too much into politics and whatnot, but I believe Larry's version, this version, and be forgotten is kind of probably echoes more true to the statement. I mean, yeah, it's pretty powerful when you think about it. But yeah, so that is the original, now back for the first, well, not back, for the first time in print with this issue through Skybound Entertainment, Skybound Comics, Image Comics, that is in this issue. And I thought that was really cool that they allowed Larry to do that they printed it now. 40 years later, 41 years later, the original print is actually there. Now, just to move forward a little bit, in the comic, there is another story in here called, it's a special bonus feature, and I don't remember this. So if it was in issue 1, and my brain's just not remembering it, but they do have a special bonus feature, and I think this was in issue 1. It was basically called Hot Potato, and they are needing to get, the Joe team is pinned down. It's Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Rock and Roll. They're pinned down, and they have to get this information away from this terrorist team that is not Cobra, and that is also included in the comic. So I think now that I think about it, I think it actually was in the original one. I'm just not remembering it because I just remember the main story and not the secondary story. But it is a very good story to also include in here. So that sums it up for G.I. Joe reprint of issue 1 through Skybound Entertainment, Skybound Comics, Image Comics. I'll have to learn what the difference is. But yeah, very cool. So, with that being said, I think G.I. Joe is still as relevant today as it was 40 years ago, at least for, some of us older folks. I hope that with Skybound Entertainment having it and trying to take it into this new direction, maybe the idea is to pull some of those Walking Dead fans or, fans of zombies in general. We're going to, hook them in with the G.I. Joe mythos and just, revive the G.I. Joe comic. I mean, the fact that any comic series can maintain for 40 years, essentially, which G.I. Joe has. I mean, it's had pauses here and there, but, I mean, from Marvel to Devil's Due to IDW, and now we have Skybound Entertainment taking the helm of the G.I. Joe comic book series. I think I'm going to very much look forward to issue 302 and beyond. You guys tell me in the comments below what you think of this review. Do you like me doing these type of reviews? Do you like knowing it? Are you going to pick up issue 301? I highly encourage everyone to pick up at least issue 301. It's the beginning of a new publisher series. Even though it is still a Real American Hero, so everything, the continuity is still there. Skybound is also going to be doing a shared universe between the Transformers and G.I. Joe. They have a special series called Duke coming out. I think another one called Cobra Commander. I'm definitely going to be picking all those up. So let me know if you're enjoying these type of reviews. Drop a comment down below. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit the bell notification. Set it to all notifications. And yeah, otherwise, I'm Mark. You've been watching Coffee with Toys, and I'll see you later.